Hi everyone. My name is Caroline. I am a reporter at the Los Angeles Times. I cover autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, kind of emerging transportation technology, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you all about the Olympic Games and also just how we plan for these mega events that come to our cities. And I've always kind of wondered what it takes to pull these off. So just to get started, I think I'm going to ask, what are some of the biggest challenges that when you're looking to plan such a big event, what kind of transportation and mobility challenges come up in terms of parking, in terms of moving people safely, and how can we get ahead of those challenges now that we're about 2 years out from the Olympics?
Well, that's an easy question to start with. I think for me as an operator, the two things that come to mind right away is how do we flatten out the surges, right? This is not just the major games, but you could go to any Dodgers game, right? Any Lakers game, and you see the same situation where you have these surges. And everyone in this panel, I think, has to deal with that, right? From parking to scooters, to the public sector of how to make that surge flatter and longer, right? To kind of reduce those times where everyone wants to leave or get there, right? And then the second thing that I think about that accompanies that is data. How do we make sure that we get the proper data in enough real time and enough personal data so that we can start to really utilize long-term planning based upon what we get as opposed to always reacting and being in reactive mode.
Also, sorry, if you want to introduce yourself before you speak, that could be good.
Gene O, CEO of Tranzito. We are curbside property managers.
And hi, I'm Sam Morrissey. I'm with LA28, so thanks for the question. I do want to thank Jonah and Harry for inviting me. It's great to be back here at such a successful event, so thank you so much. Really grateful for having me, and thanks everybody for coming out to an event. I know some people had issues with parking at this event, which happens at every event. So I think what excites me, what drew me to this role, I'm not a lifelong Olympics fan. In fact, I've often described myself as not athletic at all. Don't ask me to throw a ball. But I've worked in transportation. I was literally born into it, but I've worked in transportation for over 30 years, most of it here in Los Angeles, with a mixture of events and transportation. I see the 2028 Olympics as a huge opportunity to change the way that we in LA think about events, because everything we go to is an event. I'm a parent of children. Any children's birthday party that I go to, the first thing people ask me is, how was the drive? How was the traffic? The last thing I experience at any event is the transportation experience. The 2028 Games are a chance to change the way that people think about this, to change the way away from, I'm going to get in my car and drive as close as possible to the point of entry to that building that I want to get to, and make it about multimodal solutions and multimodal choices that suit the needs, the schedules, the demands, whatever you have of the people that are transporting to these events, because it will be the biggest peacetime gathering in global history here in Los Angeles. It will be massive, and it will happen in 820 days. So regardless of whether we're ready or not, it's coming here.
I'm Jarvis Murray. I'm with the City of Los Angeles with the Department of Transportation, and I manage a lot of the private commercial operators on the right-of-way. I manage their rules and regulations. And I just have to agree with Sam entirely. What's happening with these events that are coming is that they're kind of once-in-a-lifetime events, and it is going to give us an opportunity to really put the best face of LA forward. Right now, we have regular events all the time. I mean, we're World Series champions. We always have parades, we have basketball games, and as residents, we all have these ways of navigating it. We know how to navigate Dodger traffic. We know how to get around the Hollywood Bowl. But now we're welcoming everyone into our living room. And part of that welcoming now is, everyone doesn't, we don't want you to do the little secret thing that we kind of figure out ways to get around. We want to find a way to make it as comfortable and convenient for you as possible so that you can understand this is why we live here. And that's a really important part for us right now, where there's so much dedication within the city to really make this city shine and glow. And just knowing that now we have the backing of our politicians and everything to move everything forward, that's really what's most exciting, because now we have a chance to really change how we do things that rarely we kind of have every day, and make something that's going to be a legacy for our future generations moving forward.
And, I'm Stewart, Lyons. I'm with Bird and Spin, and I live in Toronto, so the line about World Series champions hurts, Jarvis. It feels bad. It's been 35 years, but it's okay. We'll wait another 35 years in Toronto to win again. No, events are kind of our meat and potatoes at Bird and Spin. I mean, we get super excited about that. We've done Olympics before. We've done everything from NFL drafts to Austin City Limits to, we do events every week somewhere in North America or in Europe. So I think, our whole thing is, look, we can move thousands of people at probably 1/15 the space of a car. So, for event planners and cities to think of ways to get these smaller vehicles in through the areas where you can't have cars is helpful, because it just shows that, that's kind of where we live, and we can really move a ton of people in a relatively safe and very space efficient way. That's kind of our meat and potatoes.
Thank you. My name is Alan Lazowski. First of all, I just want to thank these great leaders for putting on this event. I've had the chance to know Harry for close to a decade, and I just met Jonah for the first time today, and I told him I love you, and he said, "Why do you love me?" I said, "Because my son's name is Jonah." So, I just want to give Harry and Jonah a big round of applause for putting this together. And I also, Laz has 21,000 amazing Laz family members nationwide, and a lot of them are right here in LA, so I got to give a shout out to the Laz people that are here and give them a big round of applause, and thank you. But I think we're in an amazing time right now, and we have an amazing opportunity. And I believe that public-private partnerships are stronger than ever, are going to get stronger. And we have about 5,700 locations nationwide. We have 140 million transient transactions that happen in and out of our garages. We have over 100 stadiums and arenas that we operate. And there's such a unique time on street and off street to work together with technology and work together with public agencies and really get this right. And we're really excited to participate in this. One thing that we haven't done correctly in cities is connecting the off-street to on-street spaces in a meaningful way and make the user experience seamless for the customers. And with the advent of computer vision, AI technology, and what you can put together with apps today, there's a lot of opportunity for that. So we're really looking forward to be part of that solution.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different perspectives on this panel. Can you talk a little bit about the collaboration it takes between private companies and public agencies to pull this off, and how you communicate with guests and even athletes to properly navigate everything that they need to navigate to safely attend an event of this size?
So maybe I'll use an example of the city of Chicago. We were the first to do the largest public-private partnership in the United States in parking, where we privatized all the meters in the city of Chicago. Half those meters, if you remember, there used to be quarters that used to put into these machines. Half of them didn't work. And when we took over, the city had $22 million of revenue in that system. And we put in all new pay stations at the time and fixed the streets and added more zones. And that revenue went from 22 million to over 110 million of revenue within 24 months. And we then added the Park Chicago app, and it became a seamless parking experience. And so I think the people of Chicago would say that that's a wonderful, wonderful seamless experience. That wouldn't happen or couldn't happen if we didn't have the right public-private partnership and relationship with the city. And so we just have to be open as operators to use there's a lot of great vendor partners here on this panel and in this meeting today, and all working together from the private sector and the public sector really will create the most unique user experience. And so I really believe that we have a lot of opportunity to do that in many cities throughout the United States.
This is Jarvis. I'm with the city, and so I agree with what he's saying over there. And also, in my role, a big part of what we have to do is to work with the private sector. All of my operators are private, they're commercial, they're profit centers, they want to make money. But what we do is we try to borrow that expertise as part of that partnership. As Stewart said, they do events all the time. They do them not just in LA, they are in other cities, they're in other places. And so what we often do on our team is to check in with them and say, what worked in Seattle? What worked in Denver? What worked in Miami? What worked in Paris? And we try to take those learnings, and in my role, if there's a regulatory barrier that prevents you from being able to do that, then it's my job to try to help you navigate that barrier and potentially even help to change that rule so that things can move smoothly. And then we rely on their data. We ask them, what do you see? Do you think there'll be an increase in ridership? Do you think there'll be changes in how you want to manage traffic, whether you're a rideshare, whether you're a scooter, whether you're a robot delivery? We want to know what your projections are, because they're already projecting for their future, for their year, for what they're hoping their year will turn out to be. And so we take that information, and again, I tell them, how can I help you get to that space? Because when they benefit, then our residents, our users, our customers, our tourists are going to benefit, and it makes my job easier so that we're not headbutting each other. In that same vein, while they're telling me what they need, I let them know what we need. Something that we always say on our team is, for the community, we don't want technology to be something that just happens to them. We want them to be full participants in it. And so we reach out to our private companies and say, how can you help us help the community? And they often give us a lot of great ideas. They'll work with community colleges, they'll often local hire. There's a lot of things that they will do to help us gain the things that we think are important as a city. And then for not just moving people around, but being part of the fabric of the city. Because what we don't want is for you to come, make your money, leave. Come, be a part of the community, continue to make your money, but also build our community.
Yeah, I think Jarvis said it pretty well. I mean, we have a 8-year relationship with the city here, and look, any new technology, the relationship evolves and grows, and I think what makes it enduring and makes it successful for both residents and the companies is the fact that you have to kind of go into that knowing that there's a regulatory bargain here, and if you are even a profit-motivated company, you don't want to do things that's going to put you in a bad position with the regulator and with the people, because if the people are happy and the regulator's happy, then you're going to make more money, and then there's a natural connection there. So things like safety or parking. I mean, if it's just focused on profit and just dumping vehicles or whatever or running robots, whatever you're doing in a way that's irritating the community, it's not going to work out long term for you. So you're not going to end up getting to where you want, even from a profitable perspective. That's assuming you're not even focused on just doing the right thing. So I think Jarvis said it well. I mean, it's these relationships do well and endure when the private operator, I think, appreciates the fact that there's a bargain going on here. You're coming into the curb, you're coming into space. There has to be a give and take, and if you are open to that and you're responsive and you work very creatively and you provide data and you do all the right things, it'll work out for you, and your company will do well in that environment.
Because you asked about athletes, I can talk from the LA28 perspective, how we think about the experience at games time, and it really comes down to journeys. And me, philosophically, as a person who's worked in transportation, I say that transportation is an inherent part of life. I mean, from the moment a human climbed out of a cave or climbed down from a tree, that's mobility, that's transportation, that's how we create connections, community, that's how we do bigger things than what one person can do. So transportation is a part of that fabric of life here in Los Angeles. So the people that come in for the games, whether that's athletes or stakeholders or members of the IOC or people from the 206 different regions and countries that come here, each one of them is going to experience transportation in a different way according to their different needs and different means. Our job at LA28 is to help give them the tools to get around Los Angeles. We're also required to move them in our own fleets of buses and cars, and our official partner Honda is out here with one of their more interesting vehicles that you might see utilized in some of our venues. And that's a public-private partnership that we bring. So in order to accomplish these things, we use these public-private partnerships. But I wanted to highlight on the tech side that we don't view our job as creating new technology to solve these issues. Our job is to integrate what's out there today and to integrate that technology in a way that's really seamless, so it kind of weaves into that fabric of that experience. So we often think about the athlete from a smaller nation or country, less funded, not a Team USA, not a Team Australia, Team Great Britain, Team China, these massive organizing communities that bring tens of thousands of people here and are well funded. But these smaller nations where they're going to be relying on public transit to get around. We get questions from them today. How do we get around? What are we going to do? We want to push them to utilize the metro system, to use the Dash system, to use the existing private systems out there like Bird scooters. We want to tell them how to do that safely and securely. But we don't want to reinvent a new app or create a new solution for that. We want to integrate. So a lot of our work right now is integrating that, helping people understand how they can get around the city, and how we can also do that while delivering, again, the largest peacetime gathering in world history.
Yeah, and I think just to put it all together, when we talk about, the first question you asked, in regards to how we think about, making this work, we talk about flattening that surge, right? We also talk about dynamic pricing, and those two things coming together is how you could really optimize, in my world, curb space in an equitable way. We're all used to going to a Lakers game or Dodgers game and seeing, crazy prices when you're seeing, the Warriors coming to town, right? Whereas when there's other teams that come in, or you want to get a higher seat, you're paying a different price, and it changes every single day. That may be something we hate if we want to go to one of these games, but it's also something that's amazing when, you can't afford to go to a game, now all of a sudden you can, right? So in the same way, when you talk about loading zones and you talk about curb space, by having dynamic pricing, happen where the pricing is set based upon being a block away from downtown, 2 blocks away from downtown, and the private market works then. People have the ability to choose for themselves, am I gonna walk an extra 10 minutes and save $5? Am I not, right? And that happens if data is all integrated, right? To what Alan's talking about. If there is a connection between on-street parking and off-street parking. If there's ability for, the events to be tied into the public spaces and everyone can make a decision for themselves based upon time and cost, then it does work. This coordination, though, has to happen only with data being shared.
So I want to ask about first and last mile transportation because LA is a very sprawling city and it has a bit of reputation for not having the most comprehensive public transportation. At least I live in Venice, and if I want to take the metro, I have to find some way to get to the Santa Monica metro station, whether that's a bike or an Uber or a drive and park. So I know micromobility is one thing we talk about when we're trying to get that last mile or that first mile, but when there's a ton of people on the streets, what are some of the ways we can solve that problem? And also, how does LA pose particular challenges, especially for large events, when we talk about first and last mile transportation?
Maybe I can dive into this from the start. So that last part of your question, I tell a lot of our team and a lot of the people that approach LA28 to talk about what do the Olympics and Paralympics mean here in Los Angeles, that people outside of this region think that Los Angeles is one city. They think there is a beach. Next to that beach is a mountain with a Hollywood sign. Next to that mountain is Disneyland, and San Diego is probably next to that. They don't realize that the city of Los Angeles is 88 individual cities, of which we have multiple venues in multiple cities, each city with its own jurisdictions, each city with its own rules on micromobility devices, each city with its own approach to bike lanes and other infrastructure. That's a huge challenge. That's a challenge that people in LA have also every day. So the games are really an opportunity to kind of focus in on how do we make that last mile experience consistent. Maybe it's not the same, but maybe the experience is consistent. People understand how to get where they need to go. They can do that comfortably. And that's where we need to then work with these agencies to achieve that. Now, the other challenge on that front is then getting all these devices to work together and recognizing that people have different needs. So if we think about Bird scooters, and we think about a venue that's going to host, say, swimming inside of a stadium that typically hosts football games, you've got 40,000 people trying to descend on this site, and actually 40,000 people going to that site, staying for a little while, leaving while another 40,000 people come in, doing that throughout a cycle of about 18 hours in a day. In those places where the tens of thousands of people are congregated, we probably don't want anybody zooming through with a scooter. So it's an opportunity to look at how are we regulating and geofencing these devices. But in other places, Venice is a great example where if you do want to get up to the metro rail station, there's a lot of options you have, and a wheel is definitely a faster way to do it. But we also need to find solutions for people who aren't able to ride on a scooter or ride a bike. What are the accessible solutions? And that's where we need to partner with our city agencies. So it's a really interesting challenge where I think the games, especially the 2028 games, offer such an opportunity to say, LA is not just about cars. We have all these multimodal solutions. It's a very different region, so depending if you're at cricket in Pomona versus skateboarding or whatever we're doing in Venice, triathlon in Venice, pardon me, I'm not an expert, I'm not an athlete again, remember. But in these different regions, it's gonna look different and feel different, but we want that experience to still be ubiquitous. We wanna be able to communicate through technology. Here's the modes that you can get around with. Here's how you can get around. Here's how you can get to your venue in whichever way you choose, in whichever time frame you choose, at whatever comfort level you choose.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. Our role, again, is to create as many options as possible for people. We don't really try to prescribe what you should take, but we want to give you the option. So whether that's going to be a microtransit option or a scooter or a taxi or an AV, we want to make sure that those options are available to you. And on the regulatory side, that's really kind of the goal. And again, as I mentioned earlier, when we talk about, we mentioned public-private partnerships, we want to look at the data. We want to hear from, the companies, where do you see latent demand? Where do you see these challenges? What do you need from us to make that happen? Jarvis, we need a pickup and drop-off location over here because we feel like there's a lot of traffic that can be used. Great, let's try to create that. Or we would like to expand our services to this area. We want to add more vehicles because we see all this latent demand in these areas. That's something that we would work with them to do. Is it going to be perfect? No. But we're also not Dallas either, right? So in our minds, it's really just a matter of creating that opportunity. Sam is getting the word out there in terms of, here are your options. My job is to make sure that your options are workable and available.
Yeah, again, that's another one of our kind of core things is the first and last mile solution set that we offer cities. On average, it varies between 15 and sort of 25%. Average is probably closer to 20% of our rides either begin or end with some kind of public transit station, bus stop, subway stop, whatever it might be. So it's a core part of our business. We do call 30 million rides a year. So that's a lot of rides every year that end at or begin at a public transit station. Oftentimes in some cities, we integrate with the public transit either through a technology like an app or whatever, or just to be mapped. So that's another, again, and it's for the reasons that typically where you have public transit, you don't have a lot of space. So sometimes you have a space for rideshare, sometimes you don't. So if you don't, but you definitely have space for microtransit or micromobility vehicles. So that's another one of our core aspects that we've grown in the last 8 years, and it's certainly a core part of our business today.
So transportation is changing, and this conference is an example of that with autonomous vehicles and delivery robots. And I had an experience where I had a friend from the East Coast visit me, and she sent me a picture of a Coco robot, and she was like, "What is this?" And she had just never seen it before. And so my next question is, we're gonna have people from all over the world here for the Olympics. Some of them will have never seen a car without a driver. They'll have never seen a rolling sidewalk delivery bot. So how can we prepare guests to interact with modes of delivery and autonomy that they've never seen before, while also establishing trust and safety standards?
That's a very good question, actually. And what we like to believe here in LA is that, particularly when we have some form of regulatory authority over them, we are the group that gives you the public trust. Because there's something that they work with the city, it's vetted, we are comfortable with it, And so, with the robots, for example, we regulate the robots. We have real-time data on them. We know what's going on. And so, when you see someone in the city, I mean, they've become a part of ubiquitous, like I live downtown, and they're everywhere downtown now. Everyone's gotten used to it. At first, it was what is this thing? But now they've gotten used to it. So it will be novel for people. But what we like to think is that as a city, we are the people that provide public trust to you because we can say, we have the data, we know what they are, we know what they do, we know how many we have. It's not gonna hurt you, and the robot overlord's not taking over just yet. But a lot of that is really the faith that comes from us being able to have some regulatory authority. I do believe that there is a challenge. If we don't have any regulatory authority at all, it's harder for me to give you information about what's coming, what's next. So far, there's cooperation and there's things of that nature, but right now, if there's a problem with my regulated entities, we can geofence, we can draw that out. Hey, this is parked in front of my house. I'm not sure if I'm okay with this. We'll take care of that. The others, I don't have that kind of a control, so that's where it's a little dicier as new technologies come. When they're not working with the city, it's a little trickier for us to provide public trust, but when you do work with the city, we 100% can provide that for you.
And I want to jump on and piggyback on that because part of the work that we do in planning for the games in 2020 is work very closely with the cities. And so we work with a number of our public agency partners around issues like funding, project delivery, as well as coordination. And as I mentioned that it's such a diverse region with diverse venues, it's also an opportunity to start to standardize approaches. And what works in every city will not work in other cities, but there are approaches and ways to think about it that could be templates for other cities. I know when I worked in the city of Santa Monica and we were building a light rail, we looked to the city of LA for guidance on how to integrate a light rail into our city. So it's a similar opportunity for the city of Los Angeles to say, if you're thinking about delivery robots, here's how you could do it there. Now, in terms of preparing the world, I think we already do that today on Hollywood Boulevard. We get lots of tourists that come here and want to see these things. We just do this on a massive scale. So now we get to tell these other cities, if you're thinking about doing robots now, 820 days from the opening ceremonies, start talking to the city today, see what those regulations look like, get those robots out there so that they can become acclimated. Because as Jarvis also said, it's important that these technologies adhere to the laws. And these are laws and rules and regulations to keep them safe and to really integrate them. So the Olympics and Paralympics are just an elevated platform at a massive scale to do these things that we already have to do right, and then to do it kind of more broadly across the region.
Yeah, when we think about the curb and how to properly manage something that the demand far outstrips supply, we think about the framework of physical digital policy, right? All three things have to work in harmony. So let's take a real example. Let's take scooters, right? And you have the physical scooters that came into town unannounced before your time, so.
Wasn't me.
That's right. They came into town and LA was like, what the heck, right? Scooters are everywhere. I'm sure you all experienced that, and there was no regulation, right? The digital is what we needed, right? We needed to know where are those scooters, where are they going, where are they ending? And then the policy came after that, right? Where now Jarvis is able to do geofencing, able to say, you have to park it here, you can't ride there. Now, all of that, it seemed like was public against private, right? Like private was like, we don't want this regulation. And then when they started to realize what MDS was about, and I don't need to explain it because you're all transit wonks, but once MDS came in and scooter operators started to realize, oh, if I actually give you data in a shared protocol and hundreds of other cities are asking for it in the same way, it's actually making it easier for me to provide data. So I didn't think I wanted this, but now I realize I do want this because now I'm having 2 or 3 data analysts instead of 1 data analyst per city, right? So it's a reduction in OpEx, it's more profitable, and now all of a sudden the liability concerns and all that changes as well. So again, public actually helped private by reducing OpEx, and private, of course, helped public by creating the data to make policy work, right? Physical, digital policy. So, when you start thinking about how these things can work together, that's the way we look at it from our side, is how we can arbiter ever-growing demand for something that has a finite supply, and you do it through smart integration between all of these.
I live in Hartford, Connecticut, and we do not have any Waymos there. And but I took my first Waymo ride in LA about a year and a half ago, and it really sort of changed my life a little bit. And we have a meeting at LAS every week called the Art of the Possible, and we try to figure out what else can we do with all this 600 million square feet of parking space that we have. What's our next step? And because of that ride in LA, we really started talking more seriously about building autonomous vehicle mobility hubs and all over the country, and really leaned into it. So I think, and I've talked to hundreds and thousands of people about that experience right here in LA. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to showcase LA, and with all these wonderful visitors coming from all over the world, it's a real gift. And so I think exactly what Sam and Jarvis said is exactly true.
So zooming out a little bit, just looking at how you prepare for something like this, I'm going to ask, how do you prepare for peak demand without overbuilding and without overcrowding? And you can kind of answer that based on your own perspective and your own sector that you handle.
I'll selfishly say it's about efficiency, because the space is limited, as Gene pointed out. I mean, no one will have more issues with space in terms of where things are going to be than Sam will in 820 days. So it's about efficiency. It's about safety and efficiency, I should say, both those things. But ultimately, you kind of assume you get to the safe aspect by being good about how you manage the efficient use of the space. So, that means finding the right play for rideshare. Where does that fit in TNC? Where should they actually be in terms of logistics and locations and facilities and all that stuff? Our devices and everything else. So I think it's just about safety and efficiency ultimately.
Yeah, I'll go back to the way we started. Flatten that surge, right? If you flatten that surge, you spread it out, things work out. And then that happens from, again, pricing as a mechanism. And so I don't know about you all, but when I had my kids, it was expensive to go out, right, to dinner. So I went to a local restaurant that offered kids eat free on Wednesday nights, right? That is flattening the surge, right, for a restaurant, right? Now they're allowing customers to come Wednesday night, right? For all you people that drink, happy hour, right? Now people are coming at 4 o'clock to drink instead of 7 o'clock when everyone wants to drink, right? So there's mechanisms that happen all the time to flatten the surge, right? And pricing is one of those big mechanisms. Location is another one, like we talked about, in terms of how close you are to the venue. So, that's, I think, the key is figuring out a way to flatten that surge. In our mobility world, now we're talking about mobility hubs. Can we let people, instead of waiting for that Gets bus in a parking lot while it's baking in July and 100 degrees, can there be all of a sudden a concert? Can there be some music DJs playing? Can there be some other amenities where people would want to wait at that parking lot and pay less money at the same time, to get out or to get there, right? So these are all kind of mechanisms, but it all begins, I believe, with flattening the curve.
I think there's an opportunity to digitize the curve. A lot of cities throughout the country are looking at LiDAR-based systems to understand how is the curb really managed, and where are the loading zones in the right places? Do we have enough street parking? And when you talk about curb management, you talk about you want to maximize the utilization, optimization of that street. And many people might not know that a parking garage in this city is 30% vacant. It's a lot of them at different times throughout the day, and even at peak. So how can we best utilize that information through technology so the consumer knows where available space is? We have an app called LazGo, which you can make a reservation in advance. You can go into a facility. You have computer vision AI technology and license plate recognition, and connecting that from on-street to off-street and mapping the facility makes it easier. And you're exactly right, being able to know where what pricing should be at certain times and where you change the utilization. You may want parking on the street at a certain time. You may want it open for a lane at another time where you need to move traffic faster. So managing that curb is the most important real estate in cities, and there's a lot of demand for that curb. So we have to figure that out.
So I agree, and he's absolutely right. The curb is going to be really the next frontier for what's going on in the future. But even more importantly than that, we're not doing these events in a vacuum. A lot of what we're doing has been done on a smaller scale, but it has been done. And so we're taking lessons from what's happened in other cities, what's happened in our current major events, how Paris did the Olympics. So even though we're being very innovative, there isn't a real need to reinvent the wheel, but we do have to remain flexible so that we can take those learnings for what worked and what didn't work and apply them to LA to the extent that they can be applied to ensure that we have the best experience for traffic flow, for our customers, for our people, and for our utilization.
And the thing that stuck out to me from your question was, do we plan for the peak or do we plan for the sort of flattened curve? And as somebody who's worked in transportation for 30 years, I liken it to the way that we typically design developments and parking lots and shopping malls. You plan for the holiday shopping season, so you have tens of thousands of parking spaces as far as the eye can see around a building that are generally sitting 25–50% full, except for the holiday sale times pre-online shopping. Same for development. There are hundreds of thousands of parking spaces in the greater Los Angeles area. In the 1,200 square miles that we will be hosting games, not including the areas to the north and east of the mountains, the roughly 1,200 square miles, there are hundreds of thousands of parking spaces. Some of them are on street, some of them are off street. During the 2028 games, many of those parking spaces, either on street or in buildings that are near venues, will not be accessible. They will be closed off because of our security perimeters. That does not mean there will not be parking around the venues. It will just be further away. It may not be public on-street parking. It may be private off-street parking. There's such a huge opportunity here in terms of flattening the curve to also achieve these things that I think Alan spoke of at the beginning. How do you link the on-street and off-street? I often think about an experience I had in Korea, South Korea in 2021, where a person used a journey planning app that told them to drive into a office building. They drove up to the gate. The gate went up because there was an automatic license plate reading camera that had recognized their car from their app. They pulled in and parked. And I said, "Why are you parking here?" They said, "Oh, I'm just paying to use this empty office parking because no office workers are here today." That's the kind of maximization and utilization of assets that we have that can also address this problem of why do we have hundreds of thousands of parking spaces when we don't need all of them at all times? So it's a really amazing example to plan for the peak, but think about the peak as how do we spread that peak around and manage that. Now our challenge for the games is we have to plan for the peak because there's nothing else like it. So when we look at the Super Bowl that will happen at SoFi Stadium in 2027, that will happen, but it's very different than what we're going to do. The security footing of the games makes it slightly different. But that doesn't mean we can't think about these solutions and just think about it a little bit bigger, but we also have to be ready to flex. So we have to build into our plans ability to adjust. But I am very interested in testing these things as we get close to it and seeing how we can flex and how we can flex better. The Olympics and Paralympics is just a prime example of, everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the face. We're going to get hit in the face. We've got to iterate on those plans and adjust.
So LA is definitely known as a driving city, and I don't know if this has been planned out yet, but I'm curious if there are going to be no car zones for the Olympics and what that might look like, and more broadly, how do you kind of alleviate congestion in some areas where you want there to be maybe a more pleasant experience without making congestion much worse in other areas and allowing for pedestrians to walk around safely without clogging the freeways?
We're definitely looking at doing those kinds of things. We're looking at creating, kind of these larger fan zones along areas. In particular, one of the ones that we're considering right now is between, the crypto area down Figueroa towards Exposition Park. But we're still doing a lot of research and and working those pieces out for how that will look. But we do feel like once we get that information out and, various parts of the city that we may be looking at doing that in, we would communicate that to the residents and to everyone. But the goal of it is to make it a fun experience, to make it an easy, you're walking up and down, you're enjoying the sights, you're enjoying just the feeling, the festivities of it all. And it's not just another day in LA, it's special. And so we want to try to make it special. And so as we are doing those things, we're trying to determine, is it just no cars? Is it no bikes? Is it yes bikes, no cars? Do we allow mopeds? There's a whole kind of list of things that we're looking at right now and beginning to test out. So even as we do right now, we do ciclovia all the time, and we have a ciclovia coming up at the end of the month. That's kind of our smaller test cases for how those things work. We close those streets, we close it to traffic, we close it to some of the other modalities that are out there, and it's been very successful. So there's a way to do it, but we want to do it in a way that still finds a way to include our modalities as close as possible so that you can get to those events and then walk around with your kids and your family and your grandparents or whomever to make it a really nice time. But it's something we're definitely considering.
Yeah, I've become a bit of an amateur Los Angeles Olympics historian, and there's a famous book called Dreamers and Schemers about the 1932 games that talks about how in 1932, at the end of the opening ceremony, the announcer got on the PA and told everyone in the stands at the Coliseum to wait so that the athletes wouldn't get stuck in traffic. So we've been known as a car-centric city since at least 1932. In 1984, famously in the early spring of '84, the New York Times wrote an article about how there's going to be traffic Armageddon in LA, so it's been a car city. We need to change that message, but I'm going to tell everybody in this room there will be traffic in 2028, during the 2028 games. There will be points in time that you get stuck in traffic. I don't know where that will be, but I guarantee you, you will get stuck in traffic, just like you'll probably get stuck in traffic if you drove today, sometime in LA. It is something that happens because a lot of people here drive, do not use the other modes, but our goal is to push them to the other modes. And so how are we going to do that? And you talked about car-free streets and how do we get that messaging out? I've been told by lots of people that in 1984, people were told to leave town and go on vacation. That's great if you're able to do that. I remind people that a lot of folks here in Los Angeles work 2, 3 jobs, do not have the ability to go on vacation. We have to find a way to make sure they can still get to their jobs, work their jobs. If people can go away, we certainly want to do that. We're going to be doing broad messaging with our public agency partners across the region to tell people about these impacts that will be on the regional scale. And then when we get to venues, it will be hyper-focused on how people get to and from these venues. That's the messaging front. When you talk about car-free, we have a massive opportunity in front of us. And it is because of the security posture of the games. It is because of the fact that, unfortunately, vehicles themselves can become weapons. We want to minimize vehicles around places where we have tens of thousands of people. Now, a small scooter is not as bad as a 2,000-pound vehicle. So, like Jarvis said, there are places where we can have bikes and scooters and other vehicles. But having cars out of the mix is going to be absolutely imperative. That creates huge opportunities for biking and walking and car-free streets. So I think the opportunities are how we integrate it, and the legacy is having us all work together to implement that.
Just to help Sam out, because I have some experience in the Olympic movement as well, people have to appreciate that the city itself loses some control over the planning of all this stuff. The International Olympic Committee, obviously, which puts on the Olympic Games, they mandate a whole bunch of stuff. So it's not, people will look at him and get mad at him. It's not his fault. The IOC does mandate certain lanes and all this kind of stuff that's mandated internationally. And if you think about it, it's probably the biggest event in the world still because of all the world leaders it attracts. I mean, not just, president and everything else, but every international world leader typically goes to an Olympic Games, especially for one that's based in North America. So it's a massive global undertaking, and so it'll all be on his very ample shoulders, I'm sure. But I'm just giving him a little bit of a love because I know what he's up against.
How big of a role do you expect robo-taxis to play in shuttling people around, and how do you expect that to go over with the public?
We don't have an official partnership with Waymo. Still open. If anybody from Waymo is here, come talk to us. I'll just be honest, I'm a little terrified. I was telling people outside, I don't understand what they're learning. They're clearly learning these vehicles. I read a lot of articles in The Economist about how AI is now writing its own code to expand on AI, how different AI models have been taught how to lie. These are not good things. We have enough problems with people not adhering to regulations today. If the robots decide that that's okay because they see other people doing it, that would be a problem. So I look to Jarvis to help us address this. Thank you, Jarvis, because I think everybody's going to be really interested in robotaxis.
Well, as Stewart said, a lot of this is not totally in all of our control. You know, we expect to have at least 3, if not more, autonomous vehicle companies operating passenger service in LA by that time. And with that, security perimeters are being drawn. That's Homeland Security. There's only so far that anyone will be able to go towards a venue. And so our goal, again, on our side is to find out where they can pick up and drop off. But, you know, we're also trying to find a way to make sure that there isn't chaos in there, because we don't want a vehicle to get stuck through all the traffic and all the pedestrians. So again, the security perimeters are doing half the lifting for us. They will likely they'll be a part of the system for sure, but they'll be parking farther out for their pickup and drop off, and you'll have to walk your way in a little bit.
Okay, well, we are out of time. Sorry to be abrupt, but I guess that's going to wrap it up. But thank you guys so much. This was really interesting. Thank you.